Hi, sisters. Welcome to the Body Ally podcast, where we learn how to stop battling with our bodies and with food from a faith based approach. We learn instead how to be an ally with our bodies, partnering with our bodies and accepting them as the gift that God intended, learning how to pursue health goals not in an effort to prove value, but as an act of love. Hi, I'm Carrie Nygaard, your host. Today, we're going to get into talking about why does mental food chatter occur? Back in the year 2015, I had lost and gained the baby weight 5 times already. And even though I was at a weight that I wanted to be at, I couldn't stop thinking about food. Have any of you experienced that before where you just can't stop thinking about food? I remember at one point I was helping my husband out at the office one day and I was not hungry, but I could not stop thinking about this stupid protein bar in my purse. I'm going to tell you today how I was able to settle down, significantly quiet that mental chatter, just stop it all together. We will always think about food in one degree or another because food is necessary for life. But the chattery part, the back and forth tug of war, am I going to eat it? Am I not going to eat it? What am I going to eat? How can I stop from eating it? That can be gone. Did you know that? You do not have a food problem. Food problems, food behavior issues occur, rather unwanted food behaviors occur because of unmet needs. So if you have mental food chatter in your head, it is not because you're broken. It doesn't mean that you need to be fixed. It's because something called a survival switch has been switched. It has been turned on in your brain. So let me explain what I mean by that. So back again, let's go back to where I was in the year 2015, and I'd lost and gained the baby weight 5 times, and I was at a happy place with my weight, and I thought, oh, now I can just move on with my life, and I don't have to worry about, losing the weight anymore. However, I felt heavily burdened. From the moment that I woke up, I was thinking about what did I eat yesterday? What am I going to eat today? Did I do good? Did I do bad? Is today going to be a good or a bad day? What am I going to eat today? What's in the house that I need to keep myself from eating? And what will I do if I'm not able to resist and keep myself from eating that? What will I do to try to rectify and make that bad choice not hurt me in any shape or form? And on and on and on and on, and it would go, and it would not stop. I went to my husband in tears. And on episode 1, I talked about a heartfelt prayer that I had. It was this mental chatter that really brought me to my knees of I just need to be delivered from this turmoil of this burden. It's so bothersome. I wanted to think about other things, but no matter what I was doing, my brain kept going to food. I thought there was something inherently wrong with me. I thought I was broken in some ways. Guess what happens? When you diet, and I didn't learn this till later, but when you diet, it triggers hardwired survival responses in your brain. So I want you to think in terms of your brain. There's something called the triune brain theory by Paul McDonald. Now, he was a brain science guy back in the 1960s. We know a whole lot more about the brain than they knew back then. But even so, his brain theory, called the triune brain theory, is conceptually still very good. It helps us understand our brain, and when we apply this concept, it helps us understand our behaviors in general, just human behaviors, but specifically around food. So, I want you to picture the brain. In fact, I have a little brain here. Hang on a sec. I'm going to pull it up here. Some of you are listening on podcasts and some of you are watching. So I want you to think of your brain. Up at the very top of your brain is the neocortex. And in the very front, right here, is the prefrontal cortex. And there's the prefrontal lobes, okay? The prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that you use as you're listening to me right now. It's the part of my brain that I'm using as I talk to you right now. It's the part where we form language. It's the part where we visualize concepts. It's the part where we make choices and weigh out decisions. It's the part that we use when we create. It's the part that we use when we make goals. It's the part that we use, do you understand? Anytime we form language, up here in the prefrontal cortex. Less than 10% of our thinking occurs consciously up here in the prefrontal cortex. About 90% of our thoughts are automated in the lower brain. All of these thoughts are patterns. Our brain seeks to conserve energy and to make our life easier by making neural pathways in our brain. So we don't have to figure out how to turn the light on every time we turn on the light. It's automatic because we have neural pathways to support that. In fact, if you and you see this operating in your day to day. Just yesterday, I was driving to, I think the store or something like that. But on my way, I pulled into my husband's workplace office, that parking lot. And my daughter said, "Why are we here?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know, just force of habit." She said, "Yeah, that's what I thought." So I pulled out and off we went to where we intended to go. We have neural pathways, patterns that are already established down there, and that helps keep our life easier. Routines, patterns, right? These are the things that keep life simple. It helps us achieve, it helps us conserve energy. Very helpful, except when we have patterns down here that are not helpful. One of the things about your lower brain is that it does not have the ability to reason. That's the job up here of your prefrontal cortex. You are supposed to be able to gauge and judge if something is reasonable or not, or if something should be allowed or not. Your lower brain is in charge of making things automatic. It's also in charge of making whatever you tell it to be true. So there are millions of pieces of information coming at your brain throughout the day. But you don't notice all of those millions of pieces of information. Your brain filters out the mass majority of them and only brings to your consciousness the things that it thinks will be important to you. And how does it know the things that will be important to you? It's the things that you focus in on. For example, a few years ago, we were shopping to buy a van. And we ended up buying one of those big passenger vans. We have half a dozen kids, and we wanted a big van that we could haul friends around in and so forth. I also wanted a place where my kids could sit and not touch each other on a long road trip, in full disclosure. Anyway, when we were looking for these vans, we bought one. And right after we bought one, maybe a week later, my husband said, "I have been seeing Ford Transit vans everywhere." He says, "I think people are buying them more now since we bought one." And I said, "No, they're not. You are so silly." I said, "They've always been there. We just didn't notice." But now our brain thinks this is really important for us to notice. So it's pointing out to us, "Oh, there's a van, there's a Ford Transit, there's a Ford Transit," because we've told our brain that that's important information to filter to us. Whereas before we went shopping for a van, our brain would not have flagged that as important. The way that this works, for example, in terms of food, is that if you're telling your brain, we're out of control with food, we can't trust ourselves with food, then your brain is only going to bring little evidences to your realization to support the idea that you cannot trust yourself around food. It will not bring any of the evidence or bits of information forward to your consciousness that would prove the opposite. Our brain is serving us in every moment, but if we don't understand how it does it, it will jerk us around, okay? Not only that, but our brain is survival obsessed. Our lower brain is hardwired to keep us alive. This is great. It's the whole reason why we still exist as a species, because we are hardwired for survival. Everybody's brain is. If you are human, you have a brain that is hardwired for survival. We talk about survival instincts, right? Here's what happens. When you diet, your brain thinks that food is now scarce. Just the very act. Remember, your lower brain is not reasonable. It can't see and sense things the way that you do. It is survival obsessed and it works on patterns. It's basically the servant, right? For you, for who you consciously truly are. Your lower brain will get in the way if you don't understand. It's going to get in the way of where you want to go if you do not understand how it works. So when you diet, when you say, "I'm only going to eat this amount of food," or that we can't have any more than this, or I need to be really careful around food, it gets the attention of that survival part of your brain. And if you restrict diet, it will send up flags of, "Oh no, we better get it all in while we can." And thus we end up in the diet cycle of feeling we're either on track or off track. We're either on the wagon or we've fallen off the bandwagon. Ladies, look around. There is no tracks. There are no wagons to fall in and out of. There's just you housed within your body, moving throughout time in this life, here on this earth. You need to learn how to manage your brain. And when you understand a few things about your brain, you're able to leverage this information to your benefit so that you're the one driving your ship or driving the car, not your lower survival-obsessed brain that doesn't have the ability to reason. So when you're having all this mental food chatter, it's because your brain is trying to get you to focus in on food because it thinks that it's scarce. It wants you to live. Biology has taken over. The survival switch has gone off. So if you're having lots of mental chatter around food, it's because your survival responses have been flipped on and your brain thinks food is scarce, and so it's going to send you lots of thoughts around food to get you to eat. When you do not properly fuel your body or think about food in a place of abundance or an allowance, it will trigger all sorts of brain chatter thoughts about food. All sorts. So how do we get it to turn off? That's the question. How do I get these survival responses to turn off? Well, first and foremost, you need to do what I talk about in episode 1 of the Body Ally podcast. And that's to come to a place where you view your body as your partner, where you understand that your body's been with you through every moment of your life and that she is not something to be in a battle with. She's there serving you in every moment. And anything you experience, your body experiences too. Anything that's a success or a challenge for you, your body feels successful or challenged by the same things. So when you come to this place of partnership, that really brings a sense of safety to your nervous system, to your whole being, and that helps settle the brain, that survival obsessed brain response off or settle it down. The more restrictive you've been with diets or the more often you've dieted in the past, the more sensitive that survival switch gets. To the point that I bet if you have dieted a lot in the past, all you have to do is think about going on a diet, and all of a sudden you're thinking so much more about food than you did the day or even the hour before. Your brain's here to keep you alive. And so we have to consider our lower brain. Our lower brain, though I call it the lower brain, I also sometimes call it the primal brain. I also oftentimes refer to it as your toddler or the toddler brain. Your lower brain will have tantrums if it doesn't think that it's getting the things it needs to live, much like a toddler. But you, with your prefrontal cortex, when you can separate and understand what is hardwired survival responses, what is lower brain, just acting like a lower brain, separate from my God-given true divine self. See, up in your prefrontal cortex, that's where your true God-given power of choice is executed. That's where your God-given agency is executed. And so is the higher brain meant to rule over the lower brain? Yes, but the lower brain's also there to serve us. And when you understand how it works, then it can do that. It can serve you. But if you don't understand how it works, then it works to your detriment. Think about a car. When you have a car, think of it as your body. It's what allows you to travel throughout time here on this earth, to go from point A to point B or wherever you want to go. The toddler does not belong behind the driver's seat. It belongs in the back seat in a 5-point harness. But then your prefrontal cortex, your true conscious thinking divine self belongs behind the driver's seat. But when you go on a diet, especially when you've done repeated diets over and over and really restrictive diets, boy, that really upsets the toddler, and it climbs right out of that car seat and gets behind the wheel, and it wreaks havoc in your life. And that's why you're met with all this brain chatter thoughts around food, out of control behaviors around food, feeling like you can't trust yourself around food. So first, you need to come to a place of harmony with your body, partner with your body. That's the whole point of the Body Ally movement, to no longer battle with your body. So come to this place of partnership. Understand that those lower survival obsessed brain is not who you truly divinely are. That's just part of having a body survival, which is wonderful. We're alive, but we need to be the one in the driver's seat behind the wheel, not the toddler in the back seat. Okay, so that's the first step. We need to partner with our body. The second step is that we need to distinguish, kind of already talked about this a little bit, we need to distinguish the difference between that lower survival obsessed brain and who we really are. So first, understanding that you're not your body, partnering with your body. Number 2, separating the difference between who you truly are. Who you truly are is the person who's consistent and in control with food. Who you divinely are is the person where all of your desires are met. So I'm not talking about, well, rather, your desires are a reflection of who you actually truly really are in this life. Otherwise, you would not have those desires. I'm not talking about desires for pleasure, like eating popcorn and watching Netflix. I'm talking about your true desires to feel free, to feel at peace, to feel confident, to feel successful, to feel loved and acceptable. All of these deep desires are a reflection of who you actually divinely already are. And when you align yourself with that, it becomes so much easier to become that. Body partnership or divine body partnership allows for that to happen. Understanding that all your thoughts are not you, but that the mass majority of your thinking is automated and comes from your lower survival obsessed brain, that part is not you either. Separate yourself from that part. Understand that that's just programming that's there to keep you alive, but it's not who you truly are. Therefore, all of the unwanted food behaviors, distrust around food, mental food chatter in your head is there because your lower brain is worried. It's worried that somehow there's threats to your survival. It doesn't have the ability to reason. All it knows is that somehow food is restricted and it's worried about it. And then the third step, in order to quiet all the brain chatter thoughts around food, is that you need to come to a place, and this might sound scary to those of you who've dieted, food allowance. When you come to a place of food allowance, then the brain chatter settles down significantly. Now, if you've dieted, you might scoff at this. If food was allowed, I would never stop eating it. It has to be allowed or not allowed. Otherwise, I would just eat it all the time and I would never stop. This is not true. You wouldn't eat all the food all the time. Absolutely not. Because you're in a partnership with your body and the survival switches settle down in your brain and you're able to think clearly and be at peace of how is it that I actually want to feel. And not only that, but when you're in food allowance, that doesn't mean you eat all the food because it's allowed. So years ago, we used to live in Florida for a few years. And while we were there, we began a new family tradition where on Thanksgiving, we would make key lime pie from scratch. I would do it all from scratch. Not true little key limes. I would do normal limes. Key limes are really small, so they're hard to squeeze and zest. But I would make it all from scratch. Okay, I would squeeze and zest the limes. I would do all of that work, and it was so great. And I used to think that the key lime pie was so scarce, so that every Thanksgiving I would make a ton of it, and I would eat so much that I'd be sick on it for days after Thanksgiving even, because I had to get it in while I could because it's allowed. But now that I'm actually in true food allowance, not dieting allowed or not allowed type rules around food, but true food allowance, which I'm going to go through and discuss what is the difference between thinking in terms of dieting allowed and not allowed, and also the difference between being in true food allowance. Now that I'm in true food allowance, last Thanksgiving, I got out a piece of key lime pie. I was looking forward to it. I began eating it and I didn't even finish it. I did not desire to eat anymore. Why? Because I got to the point where I no longer was getting increased pleasure from each bite. And my body was beginning to say, oh, we've had enough. And I was able to stop. Not through willpower, not through restriction, because I knew the food was always allowed. I knew the key lime pie was absolutely allowed. I just merely had as much as I wanted. Okay, so what is true food allowance? True food allowance is the ability to separate your true God-given conscious thinking self from your lower primal brain. True allowance is understanding that all food is just a choice. It's neither good nor bad. It may have the ability to leave you feeling good or bad physically, but your body feeling physically good or bad, but it does not morally have the power to change who you actually are worthy of being good or bad. It does not morally have the power to change you from being good to bad. Food does not have that power. Now, some people say, well, Carrie, what about gluttony? Gluttony is a sin, and I'm overeating, and so I'm committing the sin of gluttony. Ladies, overeating because you have unmet needs and because you have survival responses in your brain because they've been flipped from diet mentality is not gluttony. Gluttony is what the Romans used to do, where they would gorge themselves on food, throw up, and go back for more over and over and over again, abusing their body. But when you have out-of-control behaviors with food because of survival responses being flipped that you don't understand, that is not gluttony. That's just a weakness that's been exploited, a human weakness that's been exploited by diet culture. Everyone who's experienced these symptoms of diet mentality, of feeling out of control of food, not being able to trust yourself around food, mental chatter around food, you are essentially a victim to diet mentality. So that third step, again, is we have to come into this food allowance so that our brain's survival responses settle down, okay? So, true food allowance is partnering with your body and listening to what she wants. It's learning to understand the hunger cues, understand the fullness cues, understand when your body's saying, "Ooh, that was great, let's have more," or "No, that wasn't great, let's stop." And how do you listen? You get out of your head. Diet mentality keeps you up in your head thinking, "Do I do it? Do I not do it?" It doesn't have any consideration of how does it feel in my body? What does my body say? If you're in a true partnership with someone, then you listen to them. You don't ignore them. So to be in partnership with your body means to listen to your body. Now, when you're in diet mentality, when you're in diet culture, when you're dieting, you're striving not to listen to your body because your body, you are in a battle with your body and you're trying to get it to comply so that you finally can feel the way you want to feel by losing the weight, feel confident and free and successful and all the things. But when you're partnered with her, you're listening to her and understanding that she has wisdom, not your brain spinning around. I mean, down in your body. True food allowance is leading with that higher brain. It's making a decision of what to eat and what not to eat from love and abundance. True food allowance is believing that any food is available anytime and nothing is going to go away. If you have the ability to listen to this podcast, then you clearly have a phone or some access to technology that allows you to do so. And if that is the case, then you also live in a type of life and a type of place where food is not scarce. There is a multitude of food all around. Now, I know that there are food deserts in different metropolitan, lower income areas. I'm aware of this. But by and large, if you're able to listen to me on this podcast, chances are food is abundant. You can find food anywhere. You probably have neighbors who would give it to you if you asked them. I live in orchard country where fruit absolutely falls on the ground every single year because it's not worth the farmer. Some food, depending on the variety, is not worth picking because it costs more to pick than what they could sell it for. And it falls on the ground. I know I can go outside and smell it this time of year. Food allowance is being in your power, making a food choice from understanding this food doesn't have the ability to make me feel good or bad, but what choice do I actually want to make in regards to this food? Do I like my reasons for making that choice? It's acting and not being acted upon by your lower brain, right? When you separate, that's my lower brain desire. This is what I actually want. And making those choices from a place of that empowerment, from that agency that God has placed within you. So, true food allowance. Also, let me make a point here. I said that true food allowance is believing that food is available and nothing's going away. It sometimes takes a little time to show your brain where your brain will believe that it truly is abundant and that food isn't going away. I remember when I was practicing and learning this concept, and I'm still practicing and learning the concept. There's nothing I teach that I do 100%. You know why? Because I'm human. Okay, that's why. When you come to this place of realizing that food is abundant, there's some things you can do to help foster that abundance where your brain will believe you. Remember, your brain will believe whatever it has the most evidence to support that belief. And if it believes that food is scarce, then you need to collect evidence to show your brain that no, it's absolutely abundant. So what do I suggest you doing? One thing you can do is walk through the grocery stores. Notice, even touch the different foods. Say, I can buy any of this food in whatever amounts that I actually want, actually desire. But what is it that I actually want to buy so that I get to feel the way I want to feel, so that my body and I get to have the experience and feel the way we want to feel in this life, today and tomorrow, in the next meal. So we want to get clear on helping our brain understand that all food is available. When you're dieting, you come to the table, say you're at a potluck, you look around and you think, what's here that I'm allowed to have? What can I have and what can't I have? Stop thinking in terms of can and can't. That really, your lower survival obsessed brain does not like that. It really starts to trigger those survival responses, especially if you've dieted in the past. And so instead, think in terms of what is it that I actually want? Not what lower toddler brain wants, but what is it actually that I want and what does my body want? And when you think in that term, realizing that all food's allowed, now you make a choice that feels aligned with you, that it feels aligned with your body. That's what you actually want. Now, when you're in diet mentality, you think, well, I will always want all the junk food. I'll always want the sugar. I'll always want the chips. That's lower brain. When you're actually partnered with your body and that survival response has settled down, those foods don't feel quite so alluring anymore because you know they're allowed and you could have them at any point and become accustomed to listening to your body and you desire to feel well. Now, there's some more techniques and concepts to learn to be able to manage that lower brain, but I've given you enough for now. So, ladies, I invite you not only to partner with your body, but to begin to notice the lower survival obsessed parts of your brain, the parts that aren't you, the parts that are just automated because you're human. And I also invite you to come to a place of true food allowance, not diet mentality, is it allowed or not, but true food allowance, knowing that all food is abundant. We're not in a time of famine right now, at least if you're here in the Western world able to listen to me. In fact, we have the opposite effect. If you're a member of the Clean Plate Club, I invite you not to make it the responsibility of your body to process more food than it actually needs or wants. That's not the job of your body. Why would you put that burden upon your body? So what do? Well, you stop eating when you're satisfied. You listen to your body. That is also true food allowance, listening to your body. All right, ladies, when you create a body partnership, when you can separate and understand the different parts of your brain, and when you learn to adapt this true food allowance, those mental, the survival responses, those flips that get switched when you diet, settle down. And then you're able to feel abundant around food. So many of the women that I work with say, Carrie, my brain is so much at peace around food. Or I have cookies in my house and I forgot they were there. Or I have ice cream and I haven't touched it in months. Not because not because it's allowed or not allowed, but because I don't really desire it because my brain has got the message and understands and believes that it is actually allowed. Now, if you feel like, well, that might work for some people, but it will never work for me, that's never been my experience, I would offer up that maybe that's because you've been living in diet mentality that's not compatible with the hardwiring survival responses of your brain. All right, ladies, if you want to learn more of what I do, then subscribe to this podcast, make comments below. Please share it with other people. As you share this podcast with other people, it allows the Body Ally movement to increase and move so that women can understand that they don't need to be in a battle with their body, but that they can be at peace with their bodies and accept them the way God intended our bodies to be as gifts. Check the show notes for links to my website, for other content that I create. I have other free content that I create. I also have a community of faith-based women that I take through a process, and that is a paid program. So I have free and paid resources for you. You can check the description down below to learn what is available for you. Ladies, regardless, please understand that you were not put here on this earth so that you could struggle and think about food all the time. God put you here to thrive and to create and to learn and to experience. And this is an invitation for you to come out of diet mentality and to come into a place where you are an ally with your body, no longer battling with her. All right, ladies, bye-bye.